There is a version of you that exists beneath the noise, beneath the expectations, beneath the habits you call personality. Most people spend their entire lives improving the surface while never meeting the core. They upgrade routines, refine goals, optimize productivity, and still feel something missing, because improvement without awareness only decorates the mask. Self-discovery is not about becoming someone new. It is about uncovering who you were before fear shaped you, before comparison diluted you, before approval trained you. The problem is not that you do not know who you are. The problem is that you learned who to be in order to belong. From a young age, subtle messages teach you what is rewarded and what is rejected. Be quieter, be stronger, be smarter, be less emotional, be more impressive. Slowly, adaptation turns into identity. You stop asking what feels true and start asking what will be accepted. And the longer you live from adaptation, the further you drift from authenticity. That drift creates tension. You feel it when you achieve something, but it does not satisfy you. When you say yes but mean no. When you feel restless in a life that looks successful. That tension is not weakness. It is misalignment. A signal that your outer life and inner truth are no longer in sync. Real growth begins the moment you become curious about that tension instead of suppressing it. Instead of numbing it with distractions, you sit with it. You ask what it is trying to teach you, because buried beneath discomfort is information. Information about values you ignored, boundaries you abandoned, dreams you postponed. This journey is not loud. It is not glamorous. It is deeply internal. It asks you to observe your reactions, to question your motivations, to examine your fears without immediately obeying them. And through that observation, something powerful happens. You separate who you are from who you learned to be. Self-discovery is not a destination. It is an ongoing relationship with yourself. And the more honest that relationship becomes, the more intentional your life becomes. Before you consciously chose who you are, you absorbed it. Family dynamics, cultural expectations, educational systems, social media standards, they all contributed to a blueprint. Not maliciously, but powerfully. You inherited beliefs about success, about what makes someone respectable, about how love should feel, about how emotions should be handled. Some of those beliefs support you, others restrict you. But unless examined, all of them operate automatically. This inherited identity feels natural because it developed gradually. You did not wake up one day and decide to fear failure. You learned it through subtle consequences. You did not choose to equate worth with productivity. You absorbed it through praise and comparison. The problem is not that you adapted. Adaptation is survival. The problem is when survival strategies become permanent definitions, when coping mechanisms turn into character traits, when protection becomes limitation. Ask yourself, which parts of me feel authentic and which parts feel performed? Where do I shrink to maintain peace? Where do I overextend to gain validation? Where do I avoid risk to protect my image? These questions are uncomfortable because they challenge familiarity. But familiarity is not always truth. When you start distinguishing between inherited identity and chosen identity, you reclaim authorship. You realize that while you did not design your initial blueprint, you can redesign it now. Your emotions are not obstacles. They are data. Every recurring emotional reaction reveals something about your internal narrative. If you consistently feel overlooked, you may fear invisibility. If you feel threatened by others' success, you may equate comparison with scarcity. If you feel anxious in calm situations, you may be conditioned to expect instability. Instead of judging your reactions, study them. When something triggers you, pause and ask, what belief just activated? What story am I telling myself right now? Often, the surface emotion hides a deeper fear. Anger may mask insecurity. Withdrawal may mask fear of rejection. Perfectionism may mask fear of inadequacy. When you treat emotional patterns as information rather than flaws, growth accelerates. You stop fighting yourself and start understanding yourself. That shift alone reduces internal conflict. You become less reactive and more reflective. Over time, awareness interrupts repetition. The same situation that once consumed you now becomes an opportunity to respond differently. Not because you forced positivity, but because you understood the root. And when the root changes, the reaction changes naturally. Modern culture glorifies optimization, more productivity, more discipline, more goals, more upgrades. Self-improvement becomes a race with no finish line. But improvement without reflection can become avoidance. You can chase growth while running from yourself. Sometimes the urge to constantly improve is rooted in dissatisfaction with who you are right now. The hidden belief says, I will be worthy when I achieve more. I will be confident when I look better. I will be fulfilled when I accomplish enough. But that future keeps moving. True improvement includes acceptance, not complacency, but stability. The ability to say, I am allowed to grow without hating who I am today. Growth built on self-rejection creates burnout. Growth built on self-awareness creates alignment. Instead of asking how to become more impressive, ask how to become more integrated. Are your goals aligned with your values? Are your ambitions driven by curiosity or comparison? Are you building a life you actually want, or one that looks convincing? One of the greatest barriers to self-discovery is the fear of disappointing others. Many people live entire lives structured around avoiding that discomfort. They choose careers that sound respectable. They stay in relationships that look stable. They silence opinions that might create tension. But authenticity will eventually disappoint someone, not because you are wrong, but because you are different from their expectation. Growth requires tolerance for misunderstanding. It requires trusting your internal compass more than external applause. Disappointment is temporary. Self-betrayal is cumulative. Every time you ignore your truth to maintain approval, a small fracture forms internally. Over time, those fractures create disconnection. Reversing that process requires bravery. The bravery to set boundaries, to say no, to pivot directions. When you survive disappointing others and realize you are still safe, something shifts. You stop outsourcing your identity. You begin valuing alignment over applause. That transition marks a significant stage in self-discovery. You do not need to reinvent yourself every year. Reinvention often implies rejection of your past. Integration honors it. Every version of you existed for a reason. Every coping mechanism protected you at some point. Even your mistakes carry information. Integration means acknowledging who you were without being confined by it. It means extracting wisdom instead of carrying shame. It means allowing your identity to evolve without dramatic erasure. When you integrate, you become stable internally. Your confidence no longer depends on constant validation. Your direction no longer shifts with every external opinion. You develop coherence. Thoughts, actions, and values align. That alignment creates peace. Not because life becomes predictable, but because you trust yourself within unpredictability. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of default. You grow without abandoning yourself. Self-discovery is not a single breakthrough moment. It is an ongoing conversation, a daily check-in, a willingness to adjust when something feels misaligned. It requires humility to admit when you are wrong and courage to act when you are right. As you continue this process, you become more precise with your energy. You invest in what resonates. You release what drains. You recognize when old fears attempt to resurface, and you meet them with awareness instead of obedience. The ultimate transformation is subtle. You feel less internal chaos, less need to prove, less urgency to compare. You feel grounded, directed, intentional, not because you figured everything out, but because you committed to understanding yourself honestly. And that is where real self-improvement lives. Not in dramatic overhauls, but in conscious evolution. Not in chasing perfection, but in practicing alignment. The journey continues, but now it is guided by awareness rather than autopilot. And that changes everything.